Hello everyone. When a new game comes out, people tend to ask the question, is this worth it? I will prepare for that question by answering it beforehand. To understand what I'm about to say, I will let you know that I did a no-kill playthrough. Basically, it means that you don't get a whole lot of experience to work with. With that in mind, I thought the entire game could have been done better. I thought it was interesting that they had an investigation system and learning more about an individual person to unlock certain things, but there were some choices in the game with a person that required you to spend experience. At no point should that have been implemented, I think. It is really unfair to a person doing a no-kill playthrough to give that experience away for a decision. The other thing too that I'm not entirely sure on and probably needs further testing is if you need that experience at the very moment that that choice becomes available. If that's the case, then that means you have to save your experience. So even if you did a kill playthrough, right, then you would have to ensure that you know when to save your experience and expend it on that person. I think they could have just eliminated that and just had it as part of the game for unlocking the knowledge of the person. Or perhaps it could have had something else attached to it, such as blood cost or something. I don't know. Fill in the blanks. Once you get past that frustration, then there is the repetitive combat with almost no change to it. What I'm referring to is this, is in other games, I usually had a lot of different ways to deal with an enemy. For example, Vampire the Masquerade Redemption. I could swap out one skill and put it in there, and in total I had 6 skills to work with. If I was presented with something that was too hard for me to melee, are things I could do, like cloaking in combat or other things. But in Vampyr, every time I went into combat, it was the same thing. I clicked 5 and 1, 5 being the ultimate, 1 being my heal, uh, attacked a couple of times, maybe switched out my offhand weapon. If I was dealing with a boss, I pulled out a firearm. But beyond that, there was not any change to my approach or tactics in combat. The guns are really overpowered. Once they are fully upgraded, there's 2 weapons in the game that will outdo any damage that you can throw in this game, even the ultimates. This is because the ultimates have such a long cooldown that by the time that they're back up, you've already won the fight with just firearms. So, yeah, I think they probably could have done something more about that, like, I don't know, elemental weapons or something. If the swords had the ability to do fire or chemical damage, as the game calls it, I think they could have been in a better position. One thing that I was kind of thinking of when Vampire the Masquerade Redemption was around was something to do with humanity meter. In Vampire the Masquerade Redemption, your ending depended on your humanity. If you were still human and had a lot of humanity, then you could wield a blessed sword, which did holy damage. I think that you should have still been able to use that to a certain extent, even as a vampire, due to your humanity being so high. Maybe something like that could have been implemented. Another thing too that they could have possibly done was make the firearms a main weapon thing. After swords get changed to acid and fire damage, I think they could have been made as a main weapon so that way they won't get outclassed by melee weapons. Because that's really the only thing that made them that powerful in the game was just the fact that they could do fire and acid damage, or chemical damage, I'm sorry. So if swords had it, you could just make a bunch of different firearms for you to use. Call it a day. As far as the repetitive nature of the game, what I was referring to is not just the combat, but also in traveling. There's no fast travel in the game, so you have to walk everywhere. You could walk up to one district, clear out every enemy on your way, but when you come back, they'll be respawned. It was really aggravating, not just in having to deal with them again, but also because it was harder to set up for a boss fight. If you knew a boss fight was coming, you would go out and use your dagger or knife to stab an enemy a couple times to get blood. Once you reached a full blood meter, then you did the boss fight. But there was times they would throw an enemy you didn't want to be respawned out there and instantly wreck that plan. There was also no other real system besides that to get your blood prepared for a boss fight. In order to feed on citizens in the game, you have to kill them, is my understanding, which shouldn't be a thing. But I don't know. At the end of the day, I think that this game has potential, and perhaps DLC could fix it, but it's not a game that I would personally recommend. If you want to get the game, though, then be aware that this game is going to be really difficult. It will also take a great investment of time if you do a kill playthrough. Um, so yeah, that's the most I have. Thanks for listening.